All right, welcome to the deep dive. You know how this works. You bring us the source material, we kind of roll up our sleeves and really dig in, unpack the core ideas, the insights, really give you the express lane to becoming seriously well-informed, right?
Yeah.
And today, the source you've given us is all about that internal engine, that drive, that self-motivation. And specifically, we're diving into this book, 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You've brought this to us, and that tells us you're interested in what really makes us tick, what gets us moving. We're going deep here beyond just skimming the surface. We want to uncover the real actionable strategies and maybe even some surprising angles on how to build and sustain that self-motivation in everyday life. So forget the usual motivational posters and slogans. We're after the real stuff that actually makes a difference.
Okay, so let's crack this open. This book kicks off with a pretty fundamental idea. It's that self-motivation. It's not something you just find lying around. It starts with you,
Yeah.
like actively creating yourself.
Right, like building yourself from the ground up.
Exactly. The author, he uses this analogy of a vision of snow. Imagine the universe like this fresh, untouched blanket of snow, pure potential. And our actions, like every choice we make, those are our footprints, our carvings on that snowy canvas. It's shaping who we become within all that possibility.
So it's not like we're just along for the ride. We're actually the ones sculpting our own potential with every step we take.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into this really fascinating anecdote about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Hmm.
So after totally crushing it in the bodybuilding world, he just calmly announces his next move, right? He's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to become the #1 box office star in Hollywood.
Wow, talk about a bold vision.
Right. I mean, think about it. This huge Austrian dude, thick accent, had a bit of a bumpy start in movies.
Hmm?
And someone asks him, how are you going to pull this off? And his answer was so simple. He said, create a vision of who you want to be and then live into that picture as if it were already true.
That's powerful. So it's not just about daydreaming, it's about fully embodying that future version of yourself.
Yeah, like living as if the dream is already your reality. And that ties into this concept of, and I love this, telling yourself a true lie. So the author shares this story about his daughter's homework assignment. She had to write this lie poem about how amazing she was. Essentially, these kids were crafting these fantastical, ideal versions of themselves on paper, right? But the author realized something really interesting. It's the same principle as Schwarzenegger's approach. By by lying about who they were in their poems, they were actually creating a picture of who they wanted to be.
So by sort of tricking their minds into believing this exaggerated version of themselves, they were actually setting a powerful intention.
Exactly. And psychologically, this works because our subconscious minds, they're really influenced by repetition and vivid imagery, right?
Hmm.
Kind of bypasses the conscious minds, like critical analysis. It's like self-hypnosis almost. The subconscious doesn't really differentiate between a super vivid fantasy and what we perceive as reality, especially if it's getting those mental pictures consistently.
So it's about planting that seed, that vision directly into the subconscious mind and nurturing it.
And the key is that this vision, it's got to be something you actively create.
Yeah.
You can't just sit around waiting for it. The book really stresses that having something specific to wake up for each day, something you're truly up to in life, that internal drive to live in alignment with that vision, that's where real self-motivation comes from.
It's about finding that purpose, that thing that makes you feel truly alive and engaged. That's the fuel.
Totally. Okay, switching gears a bit, let's talk about focus and simplicity. The book brings up this really classic analogy from Jimmy Johnson, the 2x4 analogy. So imagine a normal 2x4 just lying flat on the ground. Anyone could walk across it, no problem, right? No fear.
Easy peasy.
But if you took that same 2x4 and put it way up high across 2 skyscrapers, suddenly it's terrifying to walk across. The physical task is the same, but it's the focus that changes everything. Worrying about falling, that's what throws us off. Just like our worries and fears can distract us from pursuing our goals.
So focus eliminates the distractions and helps us stay on track.
Yeah, it's like laser locking onto the target, and all that other noise fades away. And then the book builds on that idea with this principle, learn to sweat in peace. The idea is the harder you prep for a challenge in a controlled environment, the easier the real thing becomes.
Like practice makes perfect, but even more intense.
Yeah, there's this great story in the book about a Little League baseball player who is scared of facing super fast pitchers. But his coach, he had him practice hitting against even faster pitches than he'd see in a game. And guess what? When game time came, those regular speed pitches looked like slow-mo.
It's about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Totally. And then the book dives into the benefits of simplifying your life. This isn't just about decluttering your house, although that can help. It's more about being intentional with your time, cutting out unnecessary stuff, delegating when you can, and even combining tasks to make things more efficient.
So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. Like the author, he talks about how he'd combine grocery shopping with reading his daughter's book reports at the deli counter, all while spending time with his kids. Multitasking, but in a smart way.
Making the most of every moment.
Right, and the book even presents this whole philosophy called handle everything immediately, based on this CEO who reads, processes, and files reports instantly. No backlog.
Keeping that inbox zero.
Exactly. And what's interesting is the book connects this idea of simplicity to creativity. Like, think about Michelangelo's David. The masterpiece was already in the marble. Michelangelo just chiseled away everything that wasn't essential.
So true creativity is often about subtracting, not adding.
Exactly. And to show how this focus and simplicity can work in the real world, the author tells this story about Jim Colby's totally unexpected congressional win in Arizona. He was up against this super popular incumbent in a historically Democrat district, had even lost a previous election, but he won. And the author says a big part of that was their laser focus on a clear, simple message and a streamlined strategy. No distractions.
So clarity and simplicity can really be a game changer.
For sure. Now let's talk about taking control of your mind, like really getting a grip on your thoughts and habits. The book argues that we have way more power over our environment and our mental state than we think. We can actually program ourselves for focus and motivation.
So it's about recognizing that we're not just victims of our circumstances. We have the power to shape them.
Exactly. And the book stresses the importance of building a track record of actually finishing things. There's this story about a guy who was always starting projects but never finishing them. He wanted affirmations to magically fix his belief that he couldn't complete things. But the author argues that the real way to change that belief is to actually start finishing things. You can't just affirm your way into being a finisher. You have to prove it to yourself with action.
Like actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. It's like learning to use a computer saying, I'm a computer whiz, won't make it true.
Yeah.
You have to actually do it, gain that experience. And then the book has this cool idea that thinking is like a habit, like dribbling a basketball. When kids first learn to dribble, they usually favor their dominant hand.
Yeah, they get stuck in that one pattern.
But with practice, they can dribble just as well with their other hand, opening up way more options. The book says it's the same with thoughts. If we're stuck in a rut of negativity or self-doubt, we can consciously choose to dribble with our optimistic, constructive thoughts more and more until it becomes a habit.
So training your mind like you'd train your body.
Precisely. Now let's talk about action. The book suggests this really interesting technique, easing into action.
Yeah.
So when you have a huge task, the initial resistance can be massive, right? But the book says sometimes the slower you start, the faster you finish. It's about overcoming that initial inertia by taking a tiny first step, almost like gently flowing into the work.
So it's about tricking your brain into getting started.
Right. And then there's this important distinction between active relaxation and the passive kind. Instead of just zoning out, active relaxation is about engaging your mind in different but still enjoyable ways, like playing strategic video games, gardening, chess. The book even brings up Winston Churchill, who painted to relax, and Einstein, who played violin.
So keeping your mind active even while you're unwinding.
Exactly. And finally, in this action session, the book talks about making today a masterpiece by focusing on the present hour. There's this great quote from Voltaire, who, on his deathbed, when asked how he'd spend his last 24 hours, said simply, one at a time. It's about being present, appreciating each hour and its possibilities.
Savoring each moment and making it count.
Totally. Okay, let's move on to harnessing your internal resources. The book talks about the power of curiosity, especially in your work life. It encourages you to be like this bumbling but friendly private detective, approaching things with genuine curiosity, asking questions, digging deeper.
So embracing that childlike wonder and thirst for knowledge.
Yeah, because curiosity, it fuels our engagement and drives our learning. And then there's this counterintuitive idea of shifting your inspiration to others. So instead of always focusing on your own goals, you intentionally focus on recognizing and supporting the strengths of the people around you. The book even mentions the relationship seminar and how when you genuinely help others succeed, you often find your own motivation gets amplified.
It's about creating a positive ripple effect.
Exactly. And the book offers a realistic perspective on progress reminding us that it's rarely a straight line upwards. There can be setbacks, steps back. The key is to plan for those moments of renewal, to work with the natural ebb and flow. Don't get discouraged by those temporary dips.
So embracing the ups and downs is part of the journey.
Right. And lastly, for internal resources, the book talks about lifelong learning, constantly challenging your brain. It mentions research on dendrite growth, how our brain's neural pathways actually grow in response to mental activity. And there's this powerful quote from Dr. Jarvik: "Whoever told you that you cannot increase your intelligence?" It's a call to embrace continuous learning, to never stop expanding your knowledge and skills.
So it's about keeping that brain muscle flexed and growing.
For sure. Now let's shift to emotions and mindset. The book makes this interesting claim that happiness actually fuels motivation and success, not the other way around. It quotes Seymour from J.D. Salinger's Fanny and Zooey, who says, "This happiness is strong stuff."
So happiness isn't just the destination, it's the fuel for the journey.
Exactly. And the book talks about engaging both sides of your brain, the logical and the creative, through things like visualization, finding joy in your work, and incorporating play into your routine. It calls it whole brain thinking.
So not just being stuck in the analytical mode, but tapping into your creativity as well.
Right. Then there's this idea of visioneering, not just having a dream, but actively engineering it into reality through vivid mental imagery. There's this story about the author's daughter, Margie, teaching her friend Michelle to dive into a pool. But instead of just telling her how, Margie had Michelle vividly visualize every step of the dive, and it worked.
It's the power of mental rehearsal.
Yeah. And the book also talks about lightening things up with sunlight and laughter. It quotes G.K. Chesterton, who said that taking things lightly is a sign of spiritual advancement. Humor can really lift your spirits and open your mind to new possibilities.
So don't underestimate the power of a good laugh.
Totally. And lastly, for emotions and mindset, the book emphasizes having a clear personal agenda and using lists to stay organized and focused on your priorities. It's like going grocery shopping with a list. You get what you need without getting sidetracked by impulse buys.
Keeping yourself on track and avoiding those distractions.
Okay, let's move on to taking ownership and embracing challenges. The book introduces this idea of pinning your life down, not just having goals, but creating a real action plan. There's this story about a high school wrestler who started planning his own moves during matches, which made him way more successful. The book quotes Nathaniel Brandon, who said, "A goal without an action plan is a daydream."
So turning those dreams into concrete steps.
Right. And then the book offers a cool perspective on rejection. Instead of seeing it as a flat-out no, view it as a challenge. Like, can't you be more creative than that?
So using rejection as fuel for innovation.
Exactly. And the book makes the point that true energy comes from having a clear sense of purpose. It contrasts people who are driven by goals with those who just react to events. There's this amazing story about a mother who, when her child was trapped under a car, found the superhuman strength to lift the car and save her child. It shows how a powerful purpose can unleash incredible energy.
It's about tapping into that deep inner drive.
Totally. And finally, for ownership, the book suggests being selective about your information intake, maybe even taking news fasts. The idea is that modern news often prioritizes sensationalism over facts, and that can be really draining.
So protecting your mental space from negativity.
Okay, last section. Let's talk about moving from worry to action and positive self-talk. The book really pushes replacing worry with action. Like whenever you catch yourself worrying, ask, what's one small thing I can do about this right now? And then do it, even if it seems insignificant. The book even has a 5-minute action plan for managing worries.
Taking control and focusing on solutions.
Yeah. And the book distinguishes between whiners who focus on problems and thinkers who focus on solutions. It encourages adopting that thinker mindset for better self-motivation and creating real value.
So shifting from complaining to problem solving.
Right. Then there's a difference between pleasure, which is often passive and routine, and enjoyment, which involves skill and challenge. The book says we should seek out more experiences of enjoyment to reach a state of flow.
Finding those activities that truly engage and energize you.
Exactly. And lastly, the book talks about turning weaknesses into strengths by reframing them. Like Schwarzenegger's accent, which was initially seen as a negative, became a unique part of his persona.
Turning those perceived limitations into assets.
Now let's dive into some really powerful motivational techniques. One is this exercise where whenever you hit an obstacle, you immediately tell yourself, I am the problem.
Taking radical responsibility.
Yeah, because once you identify yourself as the problem, you become empowered to find the solution. Then there's this fun technique called the inflate your goal game. The idea is to set a ridiculously ambitious goal, even if you don't plan to pursue it, just to stretch your thinking. The book gives an example of a salesperson who had a goal of $140,000 in sales. By playing the inflate your goal game and thinking about how to reach $200,000, they actually ended up surpassing their original goal.
Thinking big to unlock new possibilities.
Exactly. The book also talks about the importance of heroes, real people who inspire us and show us what's possible. It encourages actively choosing your heroes and learning about their journeys. And it makes the point that a vision should be judged by what it does for you. Does it give you energy, motivation, direction? It quotes Robert Tritz, who talks about the difference between problem solving, which is reactive, and creating, which is driven by a vision.
So focusing on building your vision, not just fighting fires.
Totally. And lastly, for techniques, the book emphasizes building a knowledge base through conscious learning. Don't just be passively programmed by random information. Actively seek out knowledge that will help you grow. Okay, let's touch on truth, beauty, and motivation. The book argues that the best case for honesty isn't just moral, but also practical honesty brings clarity to your goals, while dishonesty makes you feel lost. It quotes John Keats, "Truth is beauty."
So honesty as a path to both inner peace and outer success.
Exactly. And for a practical tip, the book suggests reading important stuff out loud to improve memory, just like Abraham Lincoln used to do. And it even talks about laughing for no reason and acting as if you already feel the emotion you want. It references William James, who said, "We do not sing because we are happy because we sing." Even Zen monks practice laughing meditation.
So faking it till you make it, even with emotions.
Okay, finally, the book ends with this powerful image of walking with love and death. Love, the opposite of fear, fuels creativity and zest for life. And awareness of our own mortality gives us clarity and urgency. The book encourages you to take your challenges, your fears, your dreams on a walk with these two companions, love and death, to gain new insights and motivation.
A profound way to approach life's journey.
So in this deep dive into 100 ways to motivate yourself, we've uncovered a ton of practical strategies and thought-provoking ideas on how to cultivate and sustain that essential self-motivation.
Absolutely. We've looked at the power of vision, focus, action, and mindset.
Now, the question for you is, which of these ways really resonates with you? Which ones are you going to explore further in your own life? Because remember, this deep dive is just the beginning.
It's about taking these insights and putting them into action.
Exactly. So here's a final thought to leave you with. Now that you've explored all these tools for self-motivation, what's one small action you can take today to move closer to the person you want to become? Just one small step. What will it be?
That's a great question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.